Welcome to the channel, J.W. Morrison Theologist, looking at this whole thing from a Christian perspective. And remember, the Christian values are what the American Constitution are built on, and the Australian one as well, and these values are slipping further and further away. I want to go over this quickly. I've been watching the American presidential race, and I've never been astounded by so many lies from the Democrats. They're saying Donald Trump's lazy and struggling. They're saying he's not able to keep up with all the things that he's committed himself to. He's done twice as much as what she has. The lies are just blatant. They're saying he's unstable and they're trying to undermine him, yet they never admitted that President Biden was not well the whole time. I mean, the contradictions are astounding, and we're just going to go through this and just pick up the lies that these people are trying to feed to the Americans, and it's so obvious unless you're completely blinded and just in favoritism of who these people are. Now let's see what Donald Trump thinks of the Constitution, because he got accused of wanting to terminate it, but it was as a result of the election interference. And we don't know if he truly won or not, and we'll never know, but there are people that know about the interferences and stuff. So let's just listen to this.
We're supposed to protect our country, support our Constitution, and protect our Constitution. In this great chamber, we preserve our glorious inheritance, the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. As president, I have no higher duty than to defend the laws and the Constitution of the United States. If you believe in justice, if you believe in freedom, if you believe in peace, then you must cherish the principles of our founding and the text of our Constitution. We will support, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. We believe in the American Constitution, and we believe in the rule of law. I stand before you today on the heels of a tremendous victory for our nation, our people, and our beloved Constitution.
I love it.
And when Trump was, when the election that he lost was corrupted, one way or another, he said we might as well terminate the Constitution because they're not living by it. So I just want to make that as a foundation. We'll continue on into the crux of this video, but it needs to be clear that Donald Trump is a man of integrity and he does believe in the Constitution, but he doesn't believe in those that won't live by it. And what he meant by terminating the Constitution is we may as well throw it away because there's enemies within. And what he means by enemies within is government that are corrupted.
Of that is at stake. And
now the woman that's about to speak is a woman called Liz Cheney, and she's jumped on the Harris crazy train, if that's what you want to call it. Now she's going to talk about the values of the Constitution. And remember, the context is that one way or another there was some things that went wrong with the election that Donald Trump lost. Whether he legitimately lost it or not, there was corruption in the votes, and it just was not done with integrity. And that's why he said, well, we may as well throw out the Constitution. And that's what he means when he talks about the enemy within. Now, when you're in a presidential race, the race should be about having the best policies for the country. But this is turned into a character assassination way to try and win this election.
what undergirds everything that we are as a nation. Everything that we are as a nation is the rule of law, and it's our Constitution. And when you look at what Donald Trump did after the last election, when you look at the cruelty that's involved in someone who watches an attack on the United States Capitol, an attack conducted by people in his name, and refuses for over 3 hours to tell the mob to leave. I mean, people just need to think about it.
That's a lie, an absolute lie.
And who was at the Capitol that day, as you know, was your vice president, Mike Pence, who says that you endangered his life on that day.
I don't think he was in any danger.
Mr. President, do you feel that you owe him an apology?
No, because he did something wrong. He should have put the votes back to the state legislatures, and I think we would have had a different outcome. I really do.
But he doesn't have the authority to do that, as you know.
What?
The vice president does not have the authority to reject those election results.
Are you ready? Let's have this one out just now, because it's interesting. Let's keep it interesting, right? I like Mike Pence very much. He's a very fine man. He's a very nice man. He made a mistake. His lawyer said, you cannot move. I called him the human conveyor belt. I said, even if the votes, I talked to his lawyer, even if the votes are absolutely fraudulent, he can't say, yes, sir, he can't send back. And the Democrats played it, and the rhinos played it. And then the election was over. They told him he couldn't do it. And Mike said to me, I can't do it. The lawyers told me he can't do it. They can't do it. But the lawyers were wrong, because right after the election, they all met, the rhinos and the Democrats, and they worked out a plan to make sure that future presidents don't do what I said you could do.
That's not what happened. You're referring to the Electoral Count Act. I've read that. There is no authority.
No,
legal experts, including Republican legal experts, say that he does not have that authority, Mr. President. But I want to move on.
Why did they change the law then, saying that you can't do it?
They didn't change the law. They strengthened the law because they were worried about presidents exploiting.
Meaning you could do it.
That's not what it means.
Thank you.
They strengthened the law
Mike
because they were
had the right to do it. They convinced him he didn't, and it was a horrible thing for our country. If you would have sent those votes back to Georgia, Pennsylvania, and other states, Wisconsin, which if you look at Wisconsin, they virtually admitted now that the election was rigged. If you would have sent those votes back to many of those states, they would not come back in the affirmative. And remember what I said, and you just said it pretty much, you admitted what I said was right. They said he didn't have the right to do it. And he did have the right to do it, and that's why they changed the law, taking that right away. One of the big problems was that Nancy Pelosi, Crazy Nancy as I affectionately call her, Crazy Nancy Pelosi and the mayor of Washington were in charge, as you know, of security, and they did not do their job.
They're not in charge of the National Guard. You're in charge of the National Guard.
Well, I offered them National Guard. I said, we'll give you soldiers, we'll give you National Guard, we'll give you whatever you want. And they turned me down.
And in fact,
she turned me down. She turned me down in writing.
But you said you weren't very involved that day. You did tell your supporters to come to Washington. You tweeted about it, about that speech that happened on the rally.
Am I allowed to say that?
When they went to the Capitol and they were breaking into the Capitol, smashing windows, injuring police officers, why did it take you 3 hours to tell them to go home?
I don't believe it did. Oh, let me pull it out. I have to pull it out.
You see, they undermine the facts about Donald Trump because deep state have no control over this man. He's not a puppet. They cannot afford to allow him to become president again because he's not ignorant anymore. When he went in as the president for the first time, he was completely ignorant of the enemy within in government. Now he's aware, and they are scared because he's going to know how to deal with them.
So if you look at, on January 5th, the day before, I said, please support our Capitol Police and law enforcement. They are truly on the side of our country. Stay peaceful. Stay peaceful. This was the day before, and this was in the form of Twitter. Now I use Truth Social. I think it's far superior, okay? I hope everybody's on Truth. If you look January 6th, this is before 2:30. I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. This is right after, as it was happening. But what happened is they took it down I don't know why. I think they took it down because it was so good. They didn't like it being up there. I am asking, and we didn't know until I got it back, because now I have 90 million people waiting for me to go back, but I'm on truth and I'm staying on truth. Listen, I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violation. We want no violation. We want no violence. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you. That was at 2:30. That was very early.
Mr. President, I looked at the same timeline that you did.
No, I know, but you didn't report that. You know why? Because it was taken down.
We did report it. I was reporting that day.
It was taken down and it wasn't.
But when it was clear to you that they were not being peaceful, you saw them rushing the Capitol, breaking windows, they were hitting officers with flagpoles, tasing them, beating them up. When it was clear they weren't being peaceful, why did you wait 3 hours to tell them to leave the Capitol? They listen to you like no one else. You know that.
They do. I agree with that. But
so why didn't you tell them to go home sooner?
Nancy Pelosi and the mayor are in charge. I assume they were able to do their job. They weren't.
But Pelosi's not in charge of Capitol
security. And if you remember, I made a video right outside the Oval Office in the Rose Garden. And I'm very proud of that video. I didn't have a script. I don't need scripts like a certain person that's in there right now.
What time, the video, it came out much later after they had already attacked the Capitol. Going back to your influence, in that 3 hours, over 140 officers were injured that day.
And a person named Ashley Babbitt was killed.
Yes.
You know what? She was killed, and she shouldn't have been killed. And that thug that killed her, there was no reason to shoot her. At blank range, cold blank range, they shot her, and she was a good person. She was a patriot. There was no reason, and he went on television to brag about the fact that he killed her.
The officer was not bragging about the fact that he killed her, but
bragging.
one person.
Will you pardon the January 6 rioters who were convicted of federal offenses?
I am inclined to pardon many of them. I can't say for every single one, because a couple of them probably they got out of control. But, you know, when you look at Antifa, what they've done to Portland, and if you look at Antifa, look at what they've done to Minneapolis. And
so the fact of the matter is, viewers, that they're lying about Donald Trump and what he did on January 6th.
An attack conducted by people in his name, and refuses for over 3 hours to tell the mob to leave? I mean, I really...
Now, we know that's a lie. We know that's an absolute lie.
People just need to think about what that's depravity. He watched the attack happen, and people kept asking him, please tell the people to leave. And law enforcement officers were being brutally beaten, and the Capitol is being assaulted, and he would not tell people to leave for over 3 hours.
He told the people not to be violent a day before. See, they're not going to tell you this. Okay, they've got a narrative, they've got a script, and it's belligerent, it's an antichrist rhetoric, it's not representing the reality of the facts. Look at the look on her face. Oh, they love this, but it's lies, it's antichrist rhetoric.
That cruelty is the same cruelty that we see when he lies about the federal government's disaster response, when he puts people's lives at risk.
He's not lying about the federal government's natural disaster response. They spent the money on illegal immigrants. But they have failed with the response.
Former President Trump visiting the state of Georgia, battered by Helene, helping to move emergency supplies as President Biden plans to tour the devastation in North Carolina. So where is Vice President Kamala Harris?
On Helene, people in Western North Carolina were drowning in their houses this weekend. Others were losing everything. President Biden was at his beach house, and Vice President Harris was hosting political fundraisers on the West Coast.
The president did exactly what a president in this moment needs to do, which is directing his team to take action. Look, and I talked about how the vice president also did her calls. She's going to be going to the FEMA agency and the center to get her briefing.
Former Governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, was praised for his response during Hurricane Katrina, and he joins us now. Governor, good morning to you. It is just staggering what has happened to millions of people in the Southeast as a result of this storm. And of course, you've had experience dealing with natural disasters during your time as governor. So what do you think of the response from the candidates and the president so far?
Well, I really think Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have missed an opportunity. It's not a political one, it's a leadership opportunity. The reason they need to be there is not because they can fix it. Their presence doesn't make the water go away. It doesn't put people back in their homes. It doesn't save a life. Here's what it does. It calls attention to the severity of the storm. It causes people across the country to realize how bad this is. It's apocalyptic. There's no other way to describe it. And what hit Western Carolina is something that is just unprecedented in terms of the scope of it because it's destructive to its infrastructure. Their presence brings attention, which also means people across the world start donating, they start helping, they start realizing that this is a serious, more serious than ever situation. They miss that opportunity, and that's a shame. The second thing they do is they call attention to the fact that this is people first, paperwork second. They need to make that the policy of the government to put aside filling out forms and paperwork and saying our first and only responsibility right now is to take care of the people who are displaced, the people who are in danger. They blew it on both of them.
But there seems to be a pattern here, Governor, from East Palestine to Maui, now to North Carolina. Why does this Biden-Harris administration seem so slow to react, and many people would argue seem disengaged when reacting to tragedies? It doesn't add up. Why do you think?
I don't understand it. I really don't, because historically, one of the, frankly, best people ever in the office of president to deal with crisis was Bill Clinton. He was absolutely the master of it, and I give him full credit for being a person who always gave the empathy and came in person to when there was a natural disaster, and he showed up, and his presence and his empathy for people was frankly probably the best in my lifetime. I don't ever remember Democrat or Republican president being better at it than he was. He's, frankly, I think, the template and role model for how it ought to be done.
Yeah, and Barack Obama came up here during Sandy. To your point, it's not Democrat, Republican, it's human. And it doesn't make sense why this Biden-Harris administration doesn't act human at times.
Disaster response, when he puts people's lives at risk because he won't tell the truth. He's a man who's unfit to be the president of this good and honorable and great nation. And so I've spent a lot of time working before I was elected to Congress in countries around the world that weren't free, where people were trying to achieve their freedom. And I know how fragile this can be, how fragile democracy can be. And so in this election, we have a choice. We have the choice of somebody in Vice President Harris who you know is going to uphold the rule of law. You know that she's going to lead this country with a sincere heart. You know that she is going to always be thinking about what is best for this nation. We might not agree on every issue, but she is somebody that you can trust and someone that our children can look up to.
Vice President Kamala Harris finally forced to face her failed border policies in this heated exchange with Bret Baier.
I'm glad you raised the issue of immigration because I agree with you. It is a topic of discussion that people want to rightly have. And you know what I'm going to talk about.
Yeah, but right do you, just a number. Do you think it's 1 million, 3 million?
Bret, let's just get to the point.
When in your mind did it start becoming a crisis?
I think we've had a broken immigration system transcending, by the way, Donald Trump's administration, even before.
Trump 2024 campaign senior advisor Daniel Alvarez joins us now. Daniel, good morning to you. A lot to get to with you. So let's just start with the Trump campaign's overall reaction to this interview.
You know, it was an absolute mess for Kamala Harris, but as has been her entire campaign and her entire 3.5 years in office, she couldn't answer a single question. And because it was a, tough and fair interview, she was held to account. She couldn't talk about the border crossings under her failed administration, the fentanyl pouring in. She couldn't talk about Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungary and the deaths caused because of the violent migrant crime that's occurring, the rise in violent migrant crime that's occurring because of her failure. She didn't have answers on inflation, on the economy. I definitely understand why her staff was jumping up and down, waving to end that interview, because it was a disaster for them. It was a Hail Mary pass because she is failing and the American people are seeing it.
One specific moment, right off the bat, pressed her on the number of illegal migrants in our country. Do you think she knows the number? In other words, do you think that the person that President Biden tasked with the border crisis knows how many illegal migrants have crossed the southern border under her watch?
Well, and we know that number is tens of millions, probably 20 million plus, again, because of her open border, because of that porous border. She knows the answer, but she didn't want to say it out loud. She doesn't want to admit her failures out loud because we know that the American people care about some key things. Closing and securing that southern border so that illegal immigrants cannot invade our country, so that fentanyl cannot invade our country. They want to make sure that we can bring down inflation. They want to make sure that she can fix the economy. And she probably knows the answer, but cannot give it because the answer is that she is failed, she is weak, and she is dangerously liberal. And only President Donald J. Trump, who did it during his time in office, can do it again.
Well, please tell the people to leave. And law enforcement officers were being brutally beaten, and the Capitol was being assaulted, and he would not tell people to leave for over 3 hours. That cruelty is the same cruelty that we see when he lies about the federal government's disaster response, when he puts people's lives at risk because he won't tell the truth. He's a man who's unfit to be the president of this good and honorable and great nation. And so I've spent a lot of time working before I was elected to Congress in countries around the world that weren't free, or where people were trying to achieve their freedom. And I know how fragile this can be, how fragile democracy can be. And so in this election, we have a choice. We have the choice of somebody in Vice President Harris who you know is going to uphold the rule of law. You know that she's going to lead this country with a sincere heart. You know that she is going to always be thinking about what is best for this nation. We might not agree on every issue, but she is somebody that you can trust and someone that our children can look up to. And I think it's so important for us to cast the vote for Vice President Harris.
Well, you make your own mind up, viewers. The facts are in opposition to what Liz Cheney is saying. I'll cut that there. These people, wow. Good luck. I know who I would be voting for as a spectator from Australia. I'd be voting for Donald Trump. Bye for now.